First up, it's our pleasure to welcome Jared Julia. He is not an academic or a pundit or a part of some anointed elite. He's just a parent that cares deeply about his kids' education and the education of his future grandchildren. And he was horrified by woke indoctrination and the council culture and what it's doing to our kids. Decided to do something about it after doing exhaustive research, and that is as he wrote a book. It's called Critical Feather Theory, the Red Offenders book number one. Jared, welcome to the show.
Oh, hey, thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's my pleasure. So you went into research not just kind of what wokeism is, but what the foundations of it are. And what did you find out?
Yeah, you start peeling back the layers of the onion and you start to find some pretty disturbing things, actually. It's funny that when you look at how the K through 12 curriculum is created, there's a lot of people, it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right, that would not approve of some of the people that really impact our kids' education. And it really starts with a lot of these postmodernists, like Michel Foucault, who of all the woke academics, he's the most cited, and also Herbert Marcuse. The problem with these guys is that they're unrepentant Marxists, and it was their ambition to really tear down society. In fact, Foucault's deconstruction is actually his most famous philosophical theory. And really, deconstruction just means taking apart society. And, traditionally, education has always been about replicating society, teaching kids how to be adults in society. And instead, it's now starting to teach them, because of this indoctrination, it's starting to teach them to tear apart society. And it's just disturbing stuff to uncover.
Well, and we looked at it as a quote unquote package deal, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
If you want to deconstruct society, you have to deconstruct Western civilization and our Judeo-Christian heritage, which means you have to throw all of the values out, the foundation out, and the pillars out of our society. And it always begs the question, what will be left?
Yeah, you look at what I call the red offenders in my book. They're actually the Gang of Four from the Cultural Revolution. And in the Cultural Revolution, the Red Guard, they tear apart the values of traditional Chinese culture, and they actually destroyed a lot of priceless artifacts from traditional Chinese culture. But the Red Guards were not like the SS. They were more like the Hitler Youth. They were kids between the age of 12 and 18. And that's who you're able to get to tear down the society. So they could never get people like you or me to do it, or even people our age to do it. But they can get kids that have no knowledge of history, no knowledge of Western civilization, and teach them that Western civilization is bad and evil, teach them that religion is bad, and and then say, now help us tear it down so we can replace it with some kind of utopia. And that utopia, as you and I both know, is really this a Marxist state.
Now, one of the things about this is and hold on a minute. This kind of applies to a lot of different areas. But one of my guests talked about four groups of people: useful idiots, true believers, opportunists, and cowards. And of course, the useful idiots believe that what we're doing here is this is progressive, i.e., society is evolving, et cetera, et cetera. And the true believers believe America is a racist construct and has to be deconstructed. But the fact of the matter is, what you just shared is all this has happened before. It happened in China.
Yeah, and it also happened in Germany. A lot of people think that communism and Nazism are worlds apart ideologically or philosophically, but they really aren't. There's a lot of overlap. A lot of the philosophers that are associated with Nazism interacted and talked with a lot of the Marxists. One of them, the most famous, was a guy by the name of Martin Heidegger. He actually helped Foucault come up with this theory of deconstruction. Well, the interesting thing about him is that he was president of Freiburg University. He got that job because he was appointed by Adolf Hitler. So, so this is a guy who was a legitimate Nazi. Carl Schmitt was another Nazi. These guys really came up with the philosophical underpinnings of what we think of as Nazism, and they had a lot of friends that were, that were postmodernists and were Marxists. So woke, we see, has a lot of overlap between Nazism and Marxism. They're a lot of the same thing. It's really the teachings of Marx seen through the eyes of nationalism is really what Nazism is, and the teachings of Marx being seen as a globalist is really what communism is. And Martin Heidegger was so in the know when it comes to the Nazis that at the end of the war he was afraid that he was going to get executed during the Nuremberg trials, and he was able to avoid it by by rewriting some of his works and really kind of explaining away that what he had written he really hadn't written, and stuff like that. So I think that if more people understood, the reason why I wrote the book is I think if more people understood how much Nazism and how much communism are in what we think of as woke, then they wouldn't be, as you call them, a useful idiot that believes that woke is going to get rid of racism, or it's going to get rid of sexism, or it's going to get rid of all unfairness in our society. That's really not what it's about. It's really about destruction of the society, and understanding the history of woke and understanding the profiles of the people that helped create woke. Once you know that, once you're exposed to that, you really can't be a useful idiot and believe that this woke movement is up to some kind of good, or is it all noble?
All right, Jared, we're going to take a break. Where's the best place to get your book?
It's available on Amazon, or you could just Google critical feather theory, and you'll be able to order it that way.
I'd like to welcome you back to the show. Our guest, Jared Julia, is a parent who decided to find out what the heck is going on with cancel culture and wokeism and the like, and did a deep dive, not into the impacts of it, but the source of it. Where did it come from? Where did these teachings, this philosophy, and the like come from? And he narrowed it down to a couple of scholars, two professors, and he wrote a book about it. It's called Critical Feather Theory. Now, is this an allegory?
Yeah, I mean, Critical Feather Theory. It's a graphic novel, and in a lot of the story, it takes place at a little college, at a little school, and there's a teacher bird, and she's got little chicks that have blue feathers and little chicks that have green feathers, and she tells the ones with blue feathers that they're oppressors, and the ones with green feathers are victims, and they tell their parents, and the parents complain, and Teacher Bird says that I'm not actually teaching critical feather theory. That's only taught second year law school. So that's it's because of that scene. That's why it's called critical feather theory. Because even though it's a tough subject for a lot of parents, and it can be disturbing for a lot of parents, I wanted to make it funny and amusing and accessible, so that it's a quick read that's entertaining, but they can understand the origins of this, but also what to do about it. And so that's why I wrote it.
Now, one of the ways the book has been described is Alice in Wonderland meets Animal Farm. So we know what Animal Farm predicted. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Where you end up with they promise equality, folks, and equity, but you end up with totalitarianism. What is the Alice in Wonderland reference? Is it just to the fact that we're living in a Twilight Zone episode?
Yeah, yeah. Part of the Alice in Wonderland is that it really has the plot line of Alice in Wonderland, where Alice goes through this bizarre world that she really doesn't belong in. And the main character, he's a student of Michel Foucault's in the 1970s, and he accidentally goes through, this time machine, and he ends up in 2022 at the height of woke. And but everyone there in this woke world is a talking bird. So he's in this world that he really doesn't belong in, and he understands the origins of woke, but he's never been exposed to it before because he's from the 70s. And he goes through this woke world that he doesn't really belong in, sort of like the way Alice in Wonderland, after going down the rabbit hole, is in this fantastic world that she doesn't really belong in.
Have you ever? There's been two versions of this. I never saw the second version, but I saw the original version of a movie called
Right.
Harrison Bergeron, and it was based on a Kurt Vonnegut short story. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
Well, I think you'd find it fascinating because it kind of
Okay.
parallels the allegory. But what Kurt Vonnegut must have been a genius. So
Sure.
he looked at societal trends way back when. Sean Astin starred in the original movie, the guy that played, uh, he's played a lot, Patty Duke's son. He's played in a lot of different movies. He played Rudy. He played in uh,
Oh yeah, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Yep.
Yep.
He played in the Rings, the Lord of the Rings movies and stuff like that. And what
Right.
he did is he took things, trends he saw in society, carried them to a logical extent. So um, in society, everybody had to wear this band around their forehead, so that everybody was dumbed down to the same IQ level. And then
Mm.
athletes had to wear, depending on their ability, like let's say Michael Jordan was playing, he would have to wear a 5 pound leg weight on his right leg and a 5 pound leg weight on his left arm. So to bring his abilities down to the level of the people he was playing with. And what happened is all news, entertainment, et cetera, was controlled by the government. But what happened in the story, and I'm going to blow the plot line for you. What happens is in the background, there's an elite group of people and the saying was they picked their president by lottery because any idiot could be a president, but it takes somebody with
Oh, gee.
brains to make the trains run on time. And so the secret cabal behind the scenes has music, movies, theater, and everything that's all free for the elite, where the rest are enjoying equality.
Yeah, that's a great insight into society. The thing that people miss about woke, that they're thinking that it's going to get rid of prejudice, or that it's rebranded Marxism. But one thing that people miss is how effectively it concentrates power with a small group of elites. Really, it siphons off power from you and me, and concentrates it with just a small group of people. So this really is about empowering the elites. It doesn't really empower people of color, or women, or people that are disadvantaged. And that's I once again, the more people that understand this, would push back more, I think, against this woke movement.
Yeah, where they're in Germany, Germany just started, they may have started with the Jews, but they started slaughtering a lot of other people. And then you look at the
Right.
hellhole that Venezuela became, Cuba's a hellhole. China, China, if somebody wanted to see equity, well, how are they treating the Uyghurs in China? And what do?
Yeah.
They completely control society. Folks, you go to China, if you're a Chinese person in China, walking down the street, you are under 24-hour surveillance. They know everything about you. And if you break a rule, they have a social credit score that will automatically dock you points. Like if you're on, a friend of mine was on an airplane that got diverted in China, and nobody complained about the diversion except him, and they found out why. They had complained about the diversion, they wouldn't be able to fly again.
Yeah, yeah. It's so disturbing because you mentioned the Uyghurs. A lot of people think that everyone in China is Chinese, but there's actually different races, and the Han race is the dominant race. But the Uyghurs, as you mentioned, are a racial minority, and they're basically enslaved. Um, and they basically live in concentration camps. So I mean, once again, Marxists and Nazis, that's one of the overlaps that they have in common is they will incarcerate large groups of people and enslave them and kill them and sometimes systematically starve them to death, sort of like the way many of the Chinese peasants were starved to death during the Great Leap Forward in the 1950s. So they're scary people. They say that they want equity. They say that they want to make everything equal, but what's behind it is very disturbing.
Well, I want to thank you for doing this deep dive. I've heard some of these people's names before, but didn't know that much about them. I do understand some of the roots of wokeism and cancel culture and equity and all that sort of stuff. But anytime you want to come back and talk more about this subject matter, you're welcome to be here. And folks, this is one of the reasons that, for instance, Utah had an initial offering for scholarships to alternatives to public schools. They got
Yep.
double the number of applications they were expecting. Uh,
Right.
COVID woke people up, and you talk about concentration camps. Remember how many of the pundits suggested that the people that wouldn't get vaxxed should be arrested?
Oh man. But what you bring up is a good point because I have a lot of hope. First of all, with Utah, they had double the number of applicants. They for school choice, I guess they were allocating like 40 million and now they're allocating about 80 million. And it's great. There's so many things that are happening. People since the pandemic, like you said, have been pushing back on this madness, and it makes a difference. The people that listen to your show, they may not realize how much power they have, but if they just speak up a little bit, if they just push back on this a little bit, we can beat this. And in a lot of ways, I already see the tide turning.
Great. We're out of time right now, but please come back and thank you for your book.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right, folks, again, the author, Jared Julia, in the book Critical Feather Theory.